So it seems that all that armour of contempt is having some good effect. For the first time in quite a while, Space Marine lists are having some decent success at tournaments. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Space Marines, and I thought it would be fun to take a look at a couple of the lists that won grand tournaments over the last weekend. Two really quite different Space Marine lists. It's the first weekend where that balanced data slate has been in effect for the majority of events. A fair few of the usual suspects have still been doing very well. Craft Worlds, Tyranids, Tau and Harlequins have all been having some success, but it's quite nice to see Space Marines actually taking home a couple of wins as well. In this video, we'll just take a quick look at the two Space Marine lists that managed to win, and talk about some of the interesting things that make them strong. First up, we have a list by John Damaris, who used it to take first at War in the Berg, and it's a very imposing looking force of Dark Angel's Deathwing Terminators. Nothing really too unusual about Deathwing Terminators being pretty strong. They've been a pretty solid way to play Space Marines ever since the Dark Angel's decks dropped. Decent and fairly cheap defensive profiles combined with transhuman physiology all the time can be a real nightmare to scrape off objectives. I think if there was ever a prediction for armies that would see a decent boost with Armour of Contempt, it'd be armies that focus on a lot of Terminators. In particular, the Relic Terminators in this list come out really well with it. With Armour of Contempt, you could have a 34-point Relic Terminator standing in cover, and even if you hit it with AP-3 weapons, you'd still be saving on a 3+. That's pretty crazy stats with transhuman physiology and further durability buffs, which are also here both from the Apothecary and the Chaplain. The list really is quite simple and effective, only 7 units here, 4 ridiculously enormous units of Terminators, all 10 strong, supported by a Chaplain Librarian and a Ravenwing Apothecary. They're in a Deathwing Vanguard detachment, which means that you get the command points refunded, and also the Relic Terminators will gain objective secured. Dark Angels are one of the most solid armies for spamming Terminators if you want to. Perhaps one of the most interesting things about the list is that instead of the more standard Thunderhammer and Stormshield Terminators, this list chooses to spam 2 enormous blocks of Deathwing Knights instead. They're 47 points a pop, so really aren't cheap whatsoever, and the main trade-off that you get is the additional points cost and relatively lower durability per point for massive extra melee damage. You get to hit on 2s with essentially a Thunderhammer profile, and that Thunderhammer profile doesn't give you any negative to hit either. 10-man units of these Deathwing will delete pretty well anything in the game, if they can catch up to them in combat. The other 2 Terminators are maybe the slightly more standard Relic Terminators, with Combi Bolter and Lightning Claw. Very cheap and ludicrously tough objective secured squads for the points cost. Maybe not quite as much of a unit-ending threat as the Deathwing Knights, but still that massive Lightning Claws is going to do numbers on most of the things that they catch. Dark Angel's Deathwing Terminators playing quite well with their secondary objectives as well. They can take their faction-specific one just to hold their home objective all game long. They're great targets for to the last, as any one of those units is going to be insanely tough to bring down, and they could also be used as Oaths of Moment as well. You're going to struggle to hold the centre of the board against that kind of muscle. In support as well, there's also a couple of interesting choices. The fairly standard Ravenwing Apothecary is here. He takes the Reliquary of the Repentant and Rites of War. He can heal Terminators, give them a 6+ feel no pain, and he'd just have to pay the stratagem costs for Resurrection, as he's not taking the Chief Apothecary upgrade. Kind of fine though, as this list starts on quite a lot, and it frees him up to take other Warlord traits, such as Rites of War to give objectives secured to those Deathwing Knights, which otherwise wouldn't have it. And the Reliquary is really quite a powerful combat buff as well. It tones down 4+ invul saves to a 5+, further doubling down on those enormous Terminator blobs being able to delete basically what they want. Then there's an Interrogator Chaplain with the Teeth of Terror and a Jump Pack. He takes the Litany of Faith, which is the one for the 5+ feel no pain against mortal wounds. Really quite a good defensive choice for the Dark Angels Terminators, as out of everything, mortal wounds is probably the easiest way to remove them, and with all the mortal wound generating stratagems and Tyranids about, it's well worth having some defense. There's then the Canticle of Hate for boosted charges, likely mainly used just for more threat range on the board, though I suppose you could use it to support Deep Strike if you want to. And he's a Master of Sanctity with a Wise Orator trait to allow both of those to go off reliably. Then, in another slight deviation from the more standard Dark Angels formula, there's a Librarian with a Force Sword and Jump Pack. Typically a lot of people just seem to run Ezekiel in this role. This guy seems like he's kind of filling a similar role but faster and a bit more investment needed. He takes a few of the very good Dark Angels in Terramancy discipline, Mind Worm for some handy fights last, Righteous Repugnance for the enormous melee buff on the Terminators, and Engulfing Fear, the one that you can use to cancel enemy obsec, doubling down on taking those objectives. He's upgraded to the Chief Librarian, which allows him to take 3 powers. Both his casting and denying is better than normal, with the Neural Shroud, the relic to make his Psychic Hood go further, and Psychic Mastery to give him +1 to cast, and he even buys in an extra Warlord trait as well, Decisive Tactician, giving Dark Angel's core units +1 to advance and charge within 6 inches. Again, even another few inches of movement can be pretty handy if you are using Terminators that only move 5. Overall, we've got a list that can just tank an enormous amount of enemy damage. With light cover, a lot of these are just insanely hard to shift, and you can have a really hard time scraping them off objectives, and you don't really want to go too close to them, just in case they charge in and just delete whatever you have. With just the 7 units on the board, it is one that you're going to have to make some fairly big commitments to as to where that you move the squads, as they're not going to be getting anywhere particularly quickly. In any case, it's cool to see Space Marines breaking through again, and I guess being so strong with Terminators, it was likely that we might see Dark Angels make a reappearance. Their Deathwing rules do kind of put them ahead above most other chapters when it comes to them. The other list that won a grand tournament was the Space Wolves list, run by someone called Poulador, who used it to take first at Lemonic War 2. This time it's an interesting Space Wolves list, run in a battalion and an Outrider detachment, and using Whirlwind of Rage and Born Heroes, the fairly standard combination of successors that just massively amps up your melee. It's kind of an interesting list, some fairly common staples within the Space Wolf army, though a few surprises, and honestly a few things that I'd probably do differently myself. Perhaps some of the most standard choices in the list are 3 units of 5 Incursors, 2 squads taking a Haywire Mine there, maybe with some additional points. Really quite nice objective securing, and surprisingly brutal in combat with the Space Wolf buffs. Then for the main melee threats, we've got 1 unit of 5 Blade Guard, and then 2 units of Wolf Guard with jump packs, 2 Lightning Claws, 3 Thunder Hammers, and 4 Storm Shields in each. Very nasty little general purpose melee units, particularly when souped up with things like Chaplains or Librarian buffs. For the rest of the squads in the list, there's a unit of Company Veterans with Lightning Claws and Storm Shields. I don't know if they were an include before the Balanced Data Slate came out maybe. They did get considerably nerfed with their Lookout Sir abilities. Still though, I'm sure they're not the worst for sitting around hoarding objectives and things, while more expensive stuff goes to get stuck into the enemy. There's also then 2 units of 4 Servitors, which as best I can tell is the main driver for taking an Outrider detachment as well as the main battalion. You could move all the Land Speeders and the Librarian into the main battalion detachment. It's only the Servitors that wouldn't fit due to the Elite's choices. It does seem a slightly odd choice to me to spend 3 command points to essentially get 2 very cheap units of chaff objective grabbers, but I guess Servitors are kind of handy to have around. Even though they don't do actions quite as well, they can still screen or grab objectives for far cheaper than normal. It's kind of funny that they're tougher as well with Armour of Contempt, they do get that bonus too. Then, in a massive strike from the sky, we've got a unit of 6 Longfangs with 5 Multi-Melters and an Armorium Cherub. They'll be loaded into a drop pod, and they can use the Space Wolf stratagem to ignore modifiers, so they'll be incredibly accurate on the turn that they come in. A pretty horrendous amount of damage falling from the sky there. Finally, rounding off the squads before we get into characters, there's 3 individual units of 1 Land Speeder with Multi-Melter. Cheap and fast little objective grabbers, they could be pretty handy for getting engaged on all fronts, and still threaten some vehicles a bit. It's quite nice that they're a fair bit tougher with Armour of Contempt as well. Finally, we get into the characters, where again there's a few different choices to a lot of Space Wolf lists that I've seen. There's a Master of Sanctity Chaplain with a Jump Pack and Power Fist. He's a pretty nasty melee delivery system, Canticle of Hate for +2 to charges, and Exaltation of Rage for +1 to wound in combat. The Wolfenstone gives him an aura of reroll charge rolls, which gives them some pretty crazy threat ranges in combo with the Canticle of Hate, and can really boost the damage output of one squad once per game by making their Savage Fury combat doctrine even more savage. Next, there's a fairly stacked Smash Chaplain on bike. He takes the Mantra of Strength for extra attacks and extra damage, the Relic Benediction of Fury Crozius, and the Imperium Sword Warlord trait for an extra strength and extra attack. He's also going to have a pretty hilarious threat range as well with Saga of the Hunter, allowing him to move 20 inches and then charge with +1 to charge, so this guy's basically going to get into the combats that he wants to. Then we've got a Phobos Librarian with Instincts Awoken for early assault doctrine and Murderous Hurricane for a bit of fights last, and then just in case there was any chance of the enemy units fighting first, there's not 1 but 2 Judiciars, the 85-point elite characters that make 1 unit fight last in combat. I must admit I feel like 2 Judiciars is usually going to be overkill in a list. The main reason is to fight last, and I guess to be fair, in Space Wolves they are extra threatening, allowing you to pull a 6-inch heroic intervention to give you more chance of actually getting that buff off. I think perhaps what I'm slightly surprised not to see though is one of these guys traded out for a different character with the armor of Russ. That gives you a very nice 2+ armor save and a 4+ invul, and basically allows you to do the same thing, albeit in engagement range. Just slightly surprised that if you wanted to have the Fight's Last ability, I don't know why you wouldn't take that maybe on the Phobos Librarian perhaps. Still though, maybe I'm missing important things about how this functions. Whatever happened, it does seem to have worked, as it won the tournament. Kind of interesting to see a Space Wolf list that goes really quite light on the melee squads, and instead puts a whole load of investment in objective scoring chaff units and a fair amount of hero hammer characters with a whole load of fights last for when you do make combat. Let me know what you think of the list then. It's certainly a bit more of an interesting time to be playing Space Marines now Armor of Contempt have actually made them harder to shift once more. It'll be fun to see what else people decide to do with it in armies going forward. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description. Making all the content on the channel does take a fair amount of time and effort, and if you are enjoying a lot, then any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.